Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 326.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we are going to have some fun talking about something that, well, we actually don't talk about enough, if ever, but it's something that can improve the financial performance of your particular buildings, your assets. It's something that you should be watching. It's something that actually has come to my attention. The more that I've done short-term rentals, this specific number jumped out at me like, oh my gosh, if I could find a better way to control that number and lower it or make it as close to zero as possible, I'd be happy. Because we're all spending money in this particular category and feeling out of control to some degree. But today's guest has a way to help us manage our energy costs significantly better. He is a building scientist. You're like, what is that? We're going to find out today as we talk to none other than Cody Farmer. He's also an early to riser. And if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard of Craig Ballantyne. He's been a guest here a couple of times. He's also a father. He works at home, which is, again, one of those things that I know many of us are striving towards. What's really, really interesting is that, as I've said before, you can always slice and dice this whole real estate thing in many different ways to find your specialty to create value. And today, we're going to do our best to get close to net zero energy buildings as we listen to Cody Farmer. Cody, you there?
Yeah, Jay, that was awesome. That's exactly what I hear. I love it. I love it. So your buildings have some high energy usage and it's hitting the investor's profile. And gosh, for the past, 10 years, I've been looking at it as an investor. How do I get it down? How do my buildings get healthier? And maybe can I get more rent, if I increase the performance of my buildings?
I like it. I like where you're headed. Now, this being the first time that you're here, I got to ask you the same question I ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So whether that be, Batman, Robin, whether that be, Wonder Woman, it doesn't really matter. Spider-Man, Hulk, you've got Captain America, all of these superheroes. Before they were super, though, and doing their special thing, because I think entrepreneurs, we can vision ourselves like superheroes. We have our own versions of capes and masks and tights, and we're going out there to save our customers. But before the superheroes were out there, saving the world, they were often regular people. They were often just regular individuals living their life. For example, Spider-Man. He was just out taking pictures for the newspaper, trying to get his education at school, doing his thing. Well, what we want to know is, in the same way that Spider-Man has an origin story, I believe you too have an origin story. So before, becoming a father, before becoming a building scientist, by the way, you're going to have to explain that. But before all of those things that you currently do in this whole net zero energy building thing, we want to know, who is Cody Farmer?
Sure. I was born and raised sort of on a farm, believe it or not. And that's probably why Craig Ballantyne, in the cornfields he talks about hit home. And, you have a lot of time to think out in nature. And I became a nature lover growing up through, high school and everything. People knew me as a nature kid because we kind of lived on the outskirts of town, loved camping and fishing and climbing rocks and everything. And it just came to me that I grew up in elementary school drawing clouds coming out of like pollution plants and energy creation plants. And it stuck with me that, my gosh, we're killing this world. How do we preserve it? So first and foremost, I'm a kid who loves the Colorado area and wildlife and mountains. And my mission is probably to, protect it. And one way we can do that is through building better buildings.
Got it. Okay, so you actually want Bambi to live at the end of the movie, is what you're trying to tell me.
I love Bambi. I cried when she, mom died. Yeah, totally.
Okay. So that makes total sense. So how do you go from, being a kid, loving the outdoors to take us through the journey? Because for most superheroes and or entrepreneurs, there's an evolution process. There's not, you don't typically wake up, in high school and go, I know, net zero energy buildings. What was the path to go from where, from the beginning to today?
I think in the 70s, so my parents made a really good example of a performance or almost net zero building in 1985. Had solar panels on it, everything like that. But then construction started drifting away, and I noticed that. And so then after I got through my first degree, I actually did my first investment deal there, is just paired up a modular home on a piece of property, doubled the size of it, and it's still part of my portfolio today. And before that, I borrowed $7,000 from my current wife, and I said, hey, let's buy a piece of property. She had some money, and we doubled that money in a year. And so these things started opening up. And then I got into the investment world thinking that, they don't talk about comfort. They don't talk about how much they save. They don't care about the environment, which is not true.
Right.
So away we went into studying, green building. Like, is it earth ships? Is it straw bale? Is it mud? You really want to be natural. So should we use natural building materials to build? In Europe, there's buildings that are made out of early concrete and mud that are thousands of years old.
Right.
And then we've got a lot of decay over here in the United States with our current inventories. So looking at those type of things and then being on the cutting edge of making buildings more comfort, more healthy, way less energy.
Got it. Okay. So when you say more comfort, because when you start saying, buildings in Europe, et cetera, overseas, are built with these other materials, I happen to have grown up over there.
That's right.
And I visited some of these buildings, and I always remember being cold and drafty and like, oh my God, I wish I could heat this thing. So you're not saying we have to sacrifice something in terms of comfort in order to achieve this nirvana of net zero.
And it's actually quite the opposite.
Okay.
So what we do as building scientists is we actually engineer out the losses of a building. So instead of a building always lose calories or BTUs in the air, we preserve them like a good cooler does to a six-pack on a Broncos game, let's say. All right?
And you have to be a Broncos fan, so I understand. We'll forgive you for that for now, but keep going.
Let me slide. Okay. I got a hall pass on that one.
Yep.
So, but looking at the building more in a comfort appeal means that our windows don't leak. We don't have any drafts in our buildings at all, which means that there's not dust particles flowing through the envelope all the time. The envelope, the building shell, the part that we heat and cool that costs us the money. So when we cut out drafts, that's one of the big important principles that we teach, that we practice in the field. I love the fact that you are an awesome teacher and that you practice in the field, Jay. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
That's, I got my motivation from you as well doing that. Before we started talking about it, we went out and built them. And we studied them, and they're doing exactly what they should be doing, which is being darn close to net zero and very comfortable. So if I can talk a little more about the comfort inside.
Yes, please.
If we don't have those drafts that you felt growing up in Europe, and we really remove the losses, because building walls lose energy through them just by their design. But we can create a building, a multifamily building, any type of building that can heat and cool itself with equivalent energy of a hair dryer. And there's thousands of them over in Europe. They're called certified passive house.
Huh. Okay.
And
you got my attention. Keep going.
It's called passive solar, sort of confused concept here in the States, but it kind of started out here in the early 70s, the concept of let's capture the sun and we don't have to heat ourselves in the winter when we need the heat the most. They ended up cooking themselves out. Meanwhile, a German physicist, Wolfgang Feist, perfected this spreadsheet that we can kind of add all these numbers in. And actually, if it were a spaceship getting to the moon, it would be a house getting to net zero. We could actually get it there.
Wow. Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. You said heat and cool with the equivalent energy use of a hairdryer?
Yeah, Google that. That's a fun thing to do. If you Google heats home with hairdryer, a friend of ours named Alan will probably pop up. And you'll see him put a hairdryer in a return duct in his house, walk away for the night, come back, and it has actually kept and maintained the temperature of the whole building. I think it's like 3,000 square foot home, too.
That sounds incredible.
So if we apply that to like a given mortgage, which is used, well, sometimes investors can invest in single family and up to an 8-plex with a basic mortgage. Is that right?
4 usually, but it depends.
4.
I mean, we can get creative. Depends on how it's separated and lot size and all kinds of interesting things. But we understand what you're saying.
We can look at it in different scenarios. But long story short, the electric, the oil use, the water use, those costs are coming out of the building forever. And with our building science applied to any building, we can cut that off 75 to 90% forever. And what it costs money, of course, right? It's like prepaying your expenses. You know, if you put solar on your roof, it has an outlay. But the return on that money put down is 15%. And so that's better than a 401k.
Well, that's true. So but you're basically saying we have a 7-year payback period before I'm break even.
Well, the break even, of course, it could be a 7-year period. It depends on what type of building. If it's a multifamily, the payback could be 7 years. It might be even less.
Got it.
And that's the thing that I'd like to open up with your community as investors in multifamily is forecasting these out, putting these deals together in this building science way, this passive house methodology, and seeing what that does to your paybacks.
Yeah, and basically, okay, so let's back up a second, because I've got a couple of questions, and I'm sure there's going to be some emails if I don't ask them. When you say net zero, we've used the term a couple of times, and I mean, I've also used terms like revenue neutral, especially when referring to, you know, our tax system in the U.S., because it is revenue neutral. What do you mean when you say a building is net zero? Let's start there, and then I've got a couple of more questions that I think will clarify some things for people and help them understand while I'm listening to you, why I'm getting excited about it. So, but what do you mean what is a net zero building?
Sure. So a net zero building basically means a building creates as much energy as it uses. And in order to do that effectively, you have to have some sort of an energy model to kind of say, gosh, we're going to fly to the moon. How are we going to build a building? We only want it to use this much energy because we want the roof to have enough space for the photovoltaics or the PV rays.
Right.
So net zero generates the same amount of energy as it uses, basically. And passive house and building scientists that practice passive house can get net zero results much easier than just trying to do it on your own in your own laboratory.
Got it. Well, that brings up my next question is this something that's only available for a brand new constructed building? Can I take, like, if I've got a portfolio today, I mean, some of what you're saying, I mean, some of the biggest costs, especially in some of my apartment buildings, are the common area energy components, be that, you know, outdoor lighting, be that the water, what have you. Is this something that can be applied to existing construction, or does it have to be a brand new building?
All right. What's interesting to take note of is that technology changes everything. Advancements change everything. And you just never know where, things are going to end up. I mean, we've got electric cars, solar on our roofs. We've got all kinds of very interesting things that take something that was common and ordinary or done the way that you used to do things, and it makes it better. And that's one of the biggest impediments, challenges, obstacles to change is the way you used to do things. So I'm hoping that as you're listening, you might be considering a new way to do things, because that new way to do things could be the very key to your success. In fact, if you want to pick up some more of those keys to success that include new ways to do things, feel free to pick up a copy of my book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. Just go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, cashflowdiary.com/free book. And put your name and email there. Send you a copy of the book. And I think you'll enjoy it too. For those of you who like the audio, feel free to do the exact same thing. Go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book and you can get a discount on the audiobook as well. Either way it goes, what I want you to do is something in a way that you normally don't do it. Let's get back to it, because I think Cody's got some more to share with you.
Again, you're right on, bump, right? I mean, of course, the existing inventory is probably the hugest opportunity, because we can really leverage a building that has, let's say, foundation problems. And you end up getting that asset for 10 cents on a dollar, 25 cents on a dollar, because it's going to be a scraper or something like that, except it's not. You go in and you retrofit the entire thing to this passive house standard. And away you go. And there's a New York mechanical engineer named Henry Gifford, and I put some stuff in my bio about Henry, because he when I saw him speak about his buildings, and he was a young investor and owned apartment buildings while all of his friends were going to college. So he's really, arms rolled up in the street kind of guy, knows boilers, and started applying this technique to his multifamily residence, and is just, done well with his investments.
Well, yeah, if you can eliminate this line item, it's ginormous. That's why it's got my attention, because especially on a multifamily project, and I think everybody listening understands that as we manage our net operating income better, the higher that number, the more value we create. And what you're saying is I can eliminate that number, not just manage it.
You can eliminate it. And if you can't eliminate it, you can definitely shave it off 75% to 90%. And at the same time doing that, increase the inside comfort, increase fresh air, reduce allergens, asthma, and it removes like the pollution moving in through our walls, like dust. Maybe it's a dusty house and it feels windy in the building, and all these things go away. So then it opens the door to aging in place, multifamily nursing homes, yada, yada. So the line item that you're talking about, it's a way to it's the next level of investment. Performance buildings. You're souping up the building. It's like your Corvette or your supercar, your hypercar, And is there anybody in your community that has performance buildings or almost net zero multifamily? Because I'd love to meet them. I'd love to learn about their buildings and see the value proposition.
Got it. Well, then let's do this. Because I know in the short time that we've been talking, I know that people are interested. So we might as well give them a way to follow up with you and find out more, either for their own existing inventory, or if someone does have a building that is already to this standard, you guys can connect and make that happen. Because I think what you're discussing is very, very interesting to me. Because again, anytime you can eliminate an expense, it becomes income. And
That's
I like
right.
it. So I like that. So what's going to be the best way for them to track you down, find out more, and be able to make something happen in that regard for themselves?
Well, step one is to visit liveutility-free.com/cashflow and watch a little video that we've prepared and see if it talks to you as an investor. And if it does, then you'll click the button below and you can give me your email address. And for exchange for that, I'm going to give you a 2.5-hour class that we did with Colorado State University. And if that whets your appetite, then you'll have my email, and you can get a hold of me then. And we would evaluate buildings with potential investors for a performance portfolio or net zero type portfolio investors.
Nice. I like it a lot. So let me ask this question. What keeps you going and wanting to do this? Like why? Because I mean, there's got to be such an education hurdle to what it is that you guys do because, but once you get in front of the right people, we probably get it really quickly and going, yeah, I want a lot of that. But what keeps you guys going through that low period that all entrepreneurs experience when it feels like hey, this is a great idea, but the marketplace is saying, but we don't want it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. A brilliant question. Brilliant question. The things that keep us going are the fact that what we're modeling and what we're building is actually working, that, radon levels and VOCs are down, people are healthier. And then, the real thing when it snows outside and you got a kid sick at home or whatever, as an entrepreneur, to be able to pay attention to the things that matter most is what gets us going every day.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So let me ask you this question, because I think about this, but at the same time, because one of my operations persons, she and I always go back and forth every time we're rehabbing a building, and she wants low VOC. She wants she is like you in my ear.
You.
Yeah, she's like you in my ear, and I'm always like, look, I don't want to spend more money. I don't want to spend more money just for the sake of the environment. Can you show me how it will also make us make it more profitable as well? I don't mind being environmentally friendly, but it's kind of hard it always feels like I'm having to choose between, do I want to make money or do I want to be environmentally friendly? If I want to be environmentally friendly and go broke, no problem. But if I want to make money, then I got to destroy the environment. What I hear you're saying, what's that?
Doesn't it feel that way?
Well, and that's my point. That's why I was like, what I hear you saying is that doesn't have to be the case.
That doesn't have to be the case. I've got a quick example. Yes. I always explain it to children that, we all live in a fish tank, basically. We're just land fish. And so if I have a fish tank and I put water in it and I put a fish in it, I'll ask the kid, will it live or die? And the kid will go, it'll die. Well, why will it die? And the kid will say, because it doesn't have that oxygen line running to it. And yet every one of our buildings that we live in, really, Jay, they have bathroom fans, and when you use that thing, it depressurizes your building. Like, we wouldn't do that in a submarine. We'd take on water. But that simple thing loses more energy than anything. And in my houses, I'd rather have it running all the time, because after my tenants are done taking a shower, that moisture just stays in there, starts melting the paint off and all sorts of stuff. The HRV, which is a heat recovery ventilation system or an energy recovery ventilation system, in Europe, and they replace all our bathroom fans, and that alone reduces risk, saves some money, because they have like an 85% recuperation rate. Each little bathroom fan that everybody has in their house is like leaving the door open. Like, your mom's like, were you born in a barn? No. No, Mom. It's just a bathroom fan.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You are presenting some very interesting ideas in a way that could have immediate, it at least feels like, impact. So speaking of that, like, let's say I have an existing building. What's the time frame to actually convert it to one of these performance buildings or net zero style?
It can happen really fast. And, as a performance builder and a teacher, the fastest way for us to make it happen is to get in there and share the word. So I'm kind of launching this with your audience. I'm doing some Spanish training to get it on the ground floor, because it's expensive only because they're not used to it yet. But it's a totally different way of thinking about building. And again, if we hit them with education, you can do it very fast.
Huh.
You can do it very fast.
Okay.
All the materials are here in front of us. It's just like you can use different types of walls, and really the recipe's very creative. it's getting it into the model to building scientists so that they can kind of study the ingredients.
Totally understood. Totally understood. Okay. Well, as we wrap up here, I have a question for you, because I know that there's a number of people who are listening, and maybe this was the thing that they were waiting on to hear, like, because they were concerned about their utility costs, of having to pay for it and be responsible for it, or wanting to be a little bit more environmentally conscious. And that's great. And they're probably considering becoming an entrepreneur themselves in some way, shape, or fashion. However, in the back of their head, they have that voice, and I'm sure you've heard that voice before. You've done battle with that voice. It comes up every time you want to actually become bigger, better, and do something of significance. I guess my question to you is, what would you say to that person who's battling that voice, that wants to get their, wants to get in, but they're having to contend with that voice every time they wake up? What would you tell him or her to do if you knew that they would actually take advantage of your wisdom and execute it within the next 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah, speaking for me, what would I give them so that they would come to me? Or what do they need to do as an entrepreneur to
what
keep
do they
rolling?
need? Yeah, what they need to do. What would you suggest that they do to get to their next level as an entrepreneur in order to make their dreams begin to come true?
Boy, that opens up a huge can of worms, but I just want to say that, understanding the early to rise formula. I don't want to sell anything for Craig Ballantyne, but and then I've met your stream, your consciousness, Jay, through, I think, Craig's List or whatever, and it's opened up a whole new world. And it's motivation. It's listening to people who are dealing with hard situations. It's being influenced by mentorship types that want to pay it forward with all their education, with all their free advice. It's getting out of bed and getting that meditation and getting that morning workout. And for me, it's a old Air Force habit, 3 miles, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm listening to podcasts, including Chef. Well done to him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so what it comes down to is in a lot of senses is do something, but have that routine. I can hear that completely. I like this new idea that you've brought to the table, sir. I really do, because I know if you can remove a line item of expense, you can create so much value. I like it a lot. So
and people need some geeky people like us on their team too to evaluate these kind of things. Like, let's look at the utility bills before we buy this building. And
yeah, no one's ever said that. No one's ever come to me and said, "Hey, I can make your utility bill zero or get close to that." No one's ever said anything like that. So I like the proposition that you guys have, and the it's got to be reflected. I mean, it's a longer term play, but still, I like the effect that it can have in terms of the comfort and what you're saying and financial performance of the building.
Well, you hit it home, Jay, and I can't let you off the hook either. I really would love the Cashflow Diary in print, by the way. It's such a lovely book. It really is a great book. I love the comments about walking into stores and finding hair products and lobster in McDonald's. So well done to you, and thanks for your motivation.
You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. Thanks again for taking the time to invest your knowledge here with those of us at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
LiveUtilityFree.com/cashflow, Jay. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means it's time for you to actually manage that utility bill, possibly strike it out 100%. I'm kind of excited about it because one of the most expensive things, especially for those of you practicing any short-term rentals, that utility bill is absolutely crazy. Now, if we can only just come up with a way to make toilet paper for free too, that would be awesome. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, get over there to liveutilityfree.com/cashflow. It's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.